In episode 4, it's the next day after Lottie had her spell with the beehive, and she's planning on running some errands, which include going to the bank, and for that, she dresses more casual. That's when Natalie approaches her. Natalie has been trying to get into her office for quite some time, just alone, and one of the ways she figures she can do that is by snaking her keys. But she uses the excuse of going to the market to sell honey. That's how the cult makes a lot of their money, and the person that usually sells it is Lisa. She usually goes with a guy named Todd, but Natalie convinces Lottie to give her the keys, let her drive over, so that Lisa and Natalie can kind of get over their differences. Lottie thinks it's a great idea, so she hands over the keys. Just warning Natalie, you drive. Lisa has no idea how to do that. And maybe Lottie did go to the bank, but the real place that she stopped off at was her therapist. Although it's not her normal therapist. It's somebody different. She's been going to the same guy for the past 10 years, every 6 months, like clockwork. But she decided to show up early this time. And she tells her therapist, I need you to up my medication. I'm sure you read in my file what I've been through before. And I've started having visions again for the first time in decades. The last time I had these, I became something different. I don't want that to happen again because I've worked really hard to rehabilitate my life. The doctor asks Lottie, well, you're suppressing these visions, which means they might come back stronger. So you got to ask yourself, what are these visions trying to tell you? Lottie looks at the doctor a little dumbfounded and says, they're trying to tell me nothing because they're not real. As Lottie, though, was busy with her therapist, Natalie and Lisa headed off, and on their way to the farmer's market, they started having a conversation about the ridiculous rules of the cult. Lisa buying into them, and Natalie thinking a lot of it's just ridiculous. A lot of these rules are presented as giving the person freedom, when in reality, they're pretty restrictive. One of those rules is you're not supposed to visit your family. I'm sorry, it's not that they're not allowed, it's just Lottie doesn't think it's a good idea because their anchors are at the compound. And while Lisa doesn't really want to visit her mom, the person she wants to visit isn't a person, it's a fish. She misses her little fish. But it requires her going to visit her mom. And that's an uncomfortable conversation because her mom misses her daughter. Although Lisa had a lot of issues, and she reassures her mom that by going to Lottie's cult, it's helped her. She's better now. Her mother, though, is very concerned, and Natalie puts her 2 cents in, saying, what does it matter? Your daughter's happy. Natalie's input isn't really wanted by either Lisa or her mother. So finally, Lisa's mom says, can we just talk, like, privately, mother-daughter? And Natalie has to go in the other room. But she's eavesdropping. She's overhearing all of it, and finally it gets enough for her. She tries to do her best to stick up for Lisa because she feels like her mom is misunderstanding her. And Lisa snaps at her, saying, you're not helping. But the damage is done. Lisa's mom doesn't want to have this conversation with her, and Lisa just has to leave without her fish. Although Natalie wasn't about to let that happen. She puts the fish into her mouth, sneaks out, and then spits it out into a jar, telling Lisa in the car, there you go. There's your fish. One of the fears that Lisa's mom had was that Lisa would kill the fish because she just wasn't responsible enough. And that's something that Lisa brings up at the bar because Lisa and Natalie never get to the farmer's market. Lisa's a little worried that her mom might be right. But for the meantime, she's thrilled to have her fish back. And when they get back to the cult, she proudly starts showing it off. Natalie's smoking a cigarette. She's watching all this, but then she notices that Lottie's office is open, and Natalie has the keys. She finally has her opportunity to get inside. And the reason it's open is because when Lottie returned from the therapist, she started looking at these notes that were written by some of the people in the cult. And then she saw a playing card. It was the Queen of Hearts with her eyes scribbled out of it. This is really troubling to Lottie. She definitely recognizes the card. So she left her office, walking down to a tree stump and cutting her hand open, squeezing so a lot of blood comes out of it. And she doesn't seem happy about having to do this. Lottie, though, is unaware that another one of her former Yellowjackets teammates is on the way to see her, Misty. She took Walter up on his offer to head up and see if they could find the cult. This road trip's going to be a little bit, so Walter hands her a bunch of cassette tapes and says, here, I'll let you DJ. And she gets really concerned because they're all show tunes. She feels like Walter is just another Yellowjackets fanatic who wants to spend some time with one of the girls. And she starts freaking out at him, but he says, whoa. It's not that at all. I mean, I'm sure your story is interesting and all, but no, I literally just want to spend time with the citizen detective known as African Gray. It turns out these two just both share a love of show tunes. A couple hours later, they arrive in the area of where the cult will be located, but they don't actually know how to find it, and they stop off at a diner. As they eat, she finds out that Walter is a millionaire. He got hit in the head and sued the company for millions of dollars, so he kind of just does this citizen detective thing now. Their waitress then comes over to ask them if they want anything, and Misty says, yeah, do you know where the cult is around here? And the woman doesn't, but she does know that they sell honey at a local farmer's market, and it just so happens to be that day. Although when they go to the farmer's market, they don't find anybody, because Natalie's a bad influence on Lisa. But the woman who usually sells her stuff right next to the cult informs them on where they could probably find the group. Misty wants to go that night, but Walter says, no. We should wait till morning. We think we have the element of surprise, but we don't. There's a bed and breakfast not too far away. We can just go there. So they do, and they get separate rooms at the behest of Misty. And it turns out these two are like two peas in a pod. I mean, their bedtime routine is basically the same exact thing. But they both turn in for the night, and they have plans on the next day tracking down, hopefully, Natalie and the cult. Now, this whole time, Misty has still been trying to get in touch with Taissa or Shauna to give them an update, but both of them have been blowing her off. Shauna's been dealing with the whole issue of, she killed a guy. She also has her husband who just doesn't really believe her. Shauna tells him that the police just happened to find the minivan, and he doesn't buy that. He then informs her that the police know about the affair, and Shauna's pretty shocked by that. She can't figure out how they would know, but he says, well, they do. I overheard it at the gym. Callie then walks in the kitchen and informs both of her parents that she's going to be staying over at a friend's house that night, something she's been doing pretty recently. But later on that day, when Shauna was doing some errands, she ran into that girl's mom, and she thanked her, saying, hey, I know Callie's been staying at your place a while. I'll send you money for rent and board. But the woman says, Callie hasn't stayed over our house. And now Shauna knows that Callie's been lying. She's worried about her daughter, and she starts snooping in her bedroom, and she finds condoms, which are cool, but she also finds the charred remains of Adam's license, and she knows that Callie knows. So she tracks her daughter down and drives her to a location where the two can just talk. And that's where Shauna finally comes clean to Callie about what happened with Adam. She owns up to the fact that she killed him and explains why, how Jeff had a hand in it. And Callie can't understand what her dad would even blackmail the Yellowjackets over. And Shauna says, look, we did things out there. I'm not ready to tell you about them, but we did some things that we're not proud of. Callie accepts it, and Shauna then just says, hey, you can't tell anybody about what I just told you, okay? And Callie says, I won't. The two head home, and Shauna tells Jeff, I told Callie everything. And at first, Jeff is really upset. He can't believe that Shauna is dragging their daughter into this, but she tries to explain she already knew. We might as well be honest with her. And the honesty does work, because to Jeff's shock, Callie walks in, and he thought that she was at a friend's house, and without even being pressed on it, Callie owns up to the fact that she's been lying about going to a friend's house. She's really been drinking in the woods, but she says, I'm not going to do that anymore. So Shauna's been blowing off Misty because of family issues, and Taissa's been blowing off Misty because things are getting weird with her. She took her campaign manager's car, and she seemingly blacked out, waking up on the side of the road with an empty tank, having no idea how she got there. She starts walking down the street, and a trucker pulls over. He recognizes her, and he convinces her to get in the cab by saying, hey, I voted for you. A little while later, that trucker drops her off in the middle of a small town in front of a video store. That's right, 2023, they still have video stores. But it's not just any video store, because this video store is run by Van. Now, 20-something years ago, these two were an item, and they were close. But Taissa's propensity to wake up in the middle of the night and walk towards trees with symbols in it has got Van thinking that she really should have a conversation with Lottie. And that was something that Taissa was totally against. And Van just couldn't understand why. She simply headed back to the cabin to go to bed. The next day, they find out, though, that there's a thief among them. Shauna walks in saying someone's stealing bear meat. And, of course, nobody owns up to it. Maury actually blames Ben because he had the audacity to not eat Jackie. So, there go, he must be hungry. And Ben says, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. I can't exactly get around very easy. But if I did, what are you going to do? Are you going to eat me? Maury starts walking towards Ben pretty confrontationally, and Natalie gets in the middle and says, everyone needs to chill. And Maury turns it on Natalie, saying, this is all your fault, because you haven't found any game. You're going out there hunting, coming back empty, and you're refusing Lottie's help. She tries to bless you, and you turn it away. The girls start discussing all of the quote-unquote coincidences that have happened because of Lottie. The bear even showing up, the dead birds. Some think that it's strictly Lottie, and others think it's just a mere coincidence. So Natalie says, you know what, I'm sick of this. If you guys think that she's a better hunter than me, let's have a competition. We'll both head out there separately, and we'll both try to kill something and bring it back. And poor Lottie, she doesn't even have a say in this. Mari all but volunteers her. So it's set. A little while later, both girls strapped up and headed out in the wild. Lottie, armed with a knife, didn't really know what to do. She walked around the woods. She found a symbol on a tree, but it's as if she was trying to harness the forest. She then came to an empty tree stump. She cut her hand, just like she would do with the colt years later, and she drizzled the blood all over the snow. Suddenly, she was in front of a snow-covered plane. The same plane that Laura Lee was in when it exploded. Somehow it's back. When she opens it up, you've got Laura Lee's teddy bear, you've got Laura Lee's necklace, and then there's an opening to a shaft. Lottie headed down, and suddenly she was in a mall that the girls all used to go to, and all the girls are actually there in the food court. In fact, they got Lottie some food because she looked hungry. They also mention the fact that Lottie looks really cold, and Lottie is cold, but she's also very confused. She has no idea how this is happening. Laura Lee stands up and tells Lottie, you've got to go. If you don't get warm soon, you're going to die. And she pushes her. And when she does that, Lottie is collapsed on the snow, freezing. So Lottie didn't really have a lot of luck, and Natalie did. She found a moose frozen in the lake. She rushed back to the cabin to get some help so they could pull this thing out, and most of the girls were on board with this idea, except for Mari. She pointed out that they agreed there would be no help. And people like Ben and Misty look at her and say, Mari, that's ridiculous. This is food we're talking about. So a group of them go out to the frozen over lake, try to strap some ropes around this moose's head and pull it out. But unfortunately, it's too much, and the thing sinks to the bottom of the lake, and they're left once again without food. They then head back to the cabin empty-handed, and Natalie starts trying to warm up. Now, the group that didn't go to help Natalie went to go find Lottie because they had no idea where she was, and they find her near that plane. They bring her in, and when Natalie hears the commotion, she gives up the hot tub for Lottie so that she can warm up. Two people, though, that weren't in the cabin were Taissa and Van. Van had noticed a pattern with the trees with markings. She found the map that Ben had created, and she started pointing out the trees, and she noticed that the pattern was that they created the symbol in the tree. She showed Taissa, and Taissa doesn't believe it, just thinking that you can make anything out of the pins. But Van says, well, if I'm right, then a tree should be right here, pointing to the map and saying, let's go find out. So Taissa tags along, trying to just prove to Van that it's nothing. And when they get to that location, it is nothing. There's no symbol in the tree, but it is something weird. The entire ground's covered in snow except this one patch. It's melting. They then suddenly hear something, and they think that it might be food, but it's not. It's a person. They run, they tackle this person, and it's Javi. The girls bring Javi back to the cabin, and everybody is shocked to see him. Nobody ever expected to see him again, especially Travis, who wraps his arms around him and is thrilled to see his brother, but Javi is despondent. It's as if he doesn't really remember any of these people. He just kind of looks around and doesn't say anything. Mari then remembers that Javi being alive was something that Lottie had predicted, so she points that out. And Van says, well, if it wasn't for Taissa knowing where he was, we never would have found him. Taissa once again says, no, that's just a coincidence. But Van says, you can't ignore it anymore. There is something deep inside of you that is connected to all of this. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.